Hello, and welcome to Laura Banks' Fine Artist YouTube channel. Today, I was really excited to be visiting the Brandywine Conservancy and Museum of Art in Chaddsford, Pennsylvania. Today, my main objective was to take the guided N.C. Wyeth house and studio tour. On this tour, you get to experience N.C. Wyeth's home as well as his magnificent art studio. What I really love about this tour is that it gives you a behind-the-scenes look of a famous artist's studio. If you're new to my art and my channel, please check out my website at laurabanksfineart.com. I also have a blog post associated with this video. And if you like this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification button. It really helps my small channel grow. So, a quick background on N.C. Wyeth. N.C. Wyeth, aka Noel Converse Wyeth, was an American painter and illustrator. He was born on October 22, 1882, and he died on October 19, 1945. He was a student of Howard Pyle, who was also an influential American illustrator, painter, and author, who founded the Howard Pyle School of Illustration Art, also known as the Brandywine School. N.C. Wyeth went on to create more than 3,000 paintings and illustrated 112 books. He painted subject matter that ranged from the Wild West to classic literature. So he notably illustrated Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. The proceeds from these illustrations allowed him to purchase the 18 acres of land on which his home and studio reside. In 1906, he married Carolyn Brenneman Bacchius, and they had 5 children together, some of whom became artists themselves. N.C. Wyeth home and studio tour is about an hour in length. As of this video, the tour includes a stop at the Wyeth family home and N.C. Wyeth's art studio. In 2025, the tours are offered from April 2nd to November 23rd on Wednesday through Sunday, and they have different times. So the first one starts at 10:15, the next one's 11:30, 1:15, and then 2:30. So another tour that's offered at the Brandywine Museum is the Andrew Wyeth Studio Tour, which I cover in another video and blog post. I actually highly recommend starting with the N.C. Wyeth Studio. It's by far the most impressive option, especially if you can only do one that day. That's the one I would definitely choose. So the tour actually begins by getting on a shuttle van that is located in the front of the museum, and you drive approximately 5 minutes down the road to the first stop, which is the Wyeth family home. So Wyeth built his home and studio in a really beautiful place. It's on a hill overlooking a valley, and so there's this gorgeous view, which I think would be perfect for inspiring those creative juices. When the van pulled up to the first stop, which was the Wyeth family home, the tour guide was waiting for us out on the porch. We stayed out on the porch for a few minutes, taking in the view and really getting an introduction to the Wyeth family. Then we entered the home, and the first room that we were in was the living room. It was a really cozy space filled with bookshelves and a fireplace. There was a grand piano and a grandfather clock, and all the way in the far corner you see Beethoven's bust on the windowsill. We paused here for a little while, and the tour guide told us some family stories. You can really imagine the family gathered around, happily spending their evenings together. We weren't really allowed to explore the room very much. We had to kind of stay on the edge, but you could see everything pretty well. So one thing that really dominated the space was a painting on the far wall. And this was not done by Wyeth. It was actually done by one of his daughters, and I can't remember which one. But it was a really beautiful painting, and it was very striking. The tour guide told us that it's not the original. The original, I think, might be in the museum, but I'm not exactly sure. But again, it was a kind of a centerpiece of the room. My impressions of the space, it was a very cozy area. There was a lot of light. There was a lot of things that represented education and learning, and it just had a very peaceful sense to it. So next we moved into the dining room. This was another cozy space. It was actually kind of long and narrow. There was a long table down the center and then some benches underneath where everyone would sit, and you could pull out the benches when people were there and then tuck them back in when they weren't in use. So they had some glassware and another cozy fireplace. Again, they had art everywhere. There were portraits and another plaster cast. So next to the dining room was their very tiny kitchen. You could only fit about 1 or 2 people in there at a time. It was hard to imagine cooking, say, a Thanksgiving feast there. It really made me happy for my small kitchen at home. So what I really enjoyed a lot about this tour of the Wyeth family home were the stories that were told about the family. I really felt that this mythical painter became more of a relatable father, husband, and artist. So today was actually my second time on the NC Wyeth home and studio tour. I went for the first time last summer and I was really impressed with it. It was really interesting comparing and seeing the differences between the 2 different tours. Each tour was given by a different tour guide, and I found that they told different stories and they focused on different things. One thing I found that was really interesting was during my first tour, the tour guide took us upstairs to see the bedrooms. Today, however, we stayed entirely on the first floor, and I was wondering if it was a space constraint thing because it was kind of a larger group, or if there was a time constraint issue, but I guess it all comes down to the discretion of our tour guide. So then after that, we headed outside to get back onto the shuttle van to go to the studio. When I was standing outside the Wyeth home, I really noticed there was a big chunk of the building that we didn't see. And the tour guide kind of explained to us that this was because one of the members of the museum was living there. So it just makes me kind of curious, thinking about what are the rooms we didn't get to see. After getting back on the shuttle van, we drove less than a minute up a hill to NC Wyeth's art studio. So standing on the outside of the building, you could already see these very impressive windows. You could tell that this was a really large space. We then walked down the length of the building towards the back of the building. When you first enter NC Wyeth's art studio, you enter into this small room. It is reminiscent of a mud room to me. In this room, there's some wooden furniture, some bookshelves. There is a rack of guns that NC Wyeth used as props in a lot of his Western artwork. And from here, you can go one of 2 ways. You can go towards your left into the main art studio, or you can kind of keep going straight into the prop room. When I entered the main studio for the first time, I was almost speechless. As an artist whose current studio is a single corner in her bedroom, this was an absolute dream. The main studio is actually made up of 2 different rooms. There's kind of the main room, and then there's a mural room. Both rooms are enormous with these super high ceilings and gigantic windows. The most prominent feature of the first room is this very large Palladian-style north-facing window. Also, when you look around the space, you see a collection of over 900 reference books, plaster life masks, props, a lantern slide projector, paintings, art supplies, and so much more. on one side of the room there is this painting on an easel, and the painting is entitled Dusty Bottle. It was made by N.C. Wyeth in about 3 hours, which is very impressive to me because I work very, very slowly. But what really stands out about this is he painted the dust on the bottle, and it looks so real that you almost want to touch it and wipe the dust off. Then there's this other painting on an easel right across from the dusty bottle, and this one is called Island Funeral. This painting shows a funeral of a local fisherman that took place close to the Wyeth's vacation home in Port Clyde, Maine. We were told by the tour guide that all the paintings seen throughout the home and in the studio were all replicas. The originals of this painting can be seen in the Brandywine Museum. So one of the saddest items in the studio was actually the artist's palette. It sits on a table, unused since N.C. Wyeth's death. It's kind of a reminder of the family's greatest tragedy. In October 1945, N.C. Wyeth and his 3-year-old grandson were both killed when an oncoming train struck their vehicle. And so N.C. Wyeth's daughter kind of wrote on her father's palette not to use it. And you can really see kind of her emotion in her pencil marks. So then if you continue across the art studio and down a small flight of stairs, you enter the mural room. The mural room is another expansive space. It's filled with light. It has a giant north-facing window. And when you enter this room, your attention is immediately captured by a very large mural on the wall. So in 1932, this mural was commissioned by Penn Mutual Life Insurance Company, and it was supposed to hang in their new building in the Independence Square in Philadelphia. In this mural, you see William Penn right in the center, and he's holding a royal land grant. His back is to London, and he faces the promise of a new world. Now, in order for N.C. Wyeth to work on such large pieces, he actually commissioned a movable staircase that allowed him to get to the very top of his canvases. So another feature in this room is an 18-plus foot birch bark canoe, which is an object that appears in many of N.C. Wyeth's early Western paintings. The canoe was purchased in 1937 from a dealer in Rockland, Maine, and it is thought that the canoe was built by the indigenous tribe there. It is one of the oldest known birch bark canoes that still survive. And then above the canoe, you see this very ornate golden frame. Supposedly, the frame once held a pirate picture, but the museum does not own that piece, so the frame sits empty. So then when you exit the main art studio spaces, you're back in that little entryway room, and from there you can head into a side prop room. This room really reminded me of an antique store or someone's attic, but it was filled with lots of props that N.C. Wyeth would use in many of his paintings. There's a saddle, snowshoes, farming equipment, plaster casts. There's a little model barn. He had a lot of stuff. Overall, this is a great tour. I highly recommend it. There are many things that are really interesting that you can learn. I didn't really know much about NC Wyeth before I took this tour, and now I really appreciate a lot of what he contributed to the art world. Thanks so much for watching my video and coming with me on another adventure. Please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow, and have a great day.